Hello, my friends. Feeling good today. Let's see if Jon gets on here quickly. Got some good questions this week. Hey, what's up, bro?
Hi.
Hi.
I just heard you say feeling good today, and I want to second that right away.
Yeah, you feeling good? I love
I'm
that.
finally back on caffeine.
Oh shit! Wait, you didn't? I thought you never went off it though.
No, I told you I went a month.
Oh, I thought you had like a supply of caffeinated beans left. Maybe you got through that quickly.
Oh yeah, no. Before we took a break, the first one we did before the break was no caffeine, and then did 2 afterwards, and then I'm back. And it's interesting to think about using caffeine as a tool, because I've always thought it was that, but it's such a motivator.
Yeah.
And without it, I just constantly. I mean, granted, it's not probably the right time to be experimenting with anything that's going to make you depressed, because it's really easy to feel depressed at this point.
Very true.
But yeah, I'm back and I'm feeling really good the last couple of days.
You do look a bright-eyed and bushy-haired. It's great. Bushy-bearded.
The hair is definitely bushy.
How
you feeling? You good?
I'm feeling good, man. I got a bunch of random questions about this Darren Criss show that I wrote a couple songs for, because we just premiered it yesterday. Also, your speaker is really loud, so I hear myself feeding back. I don't know if that's fixable.
I'm lowering a little bit.
Can I hear me now?
Yeah.
So to the people asking questions, I don't know when the full season is coming out. I don't know if there's a season 2. Probably, even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to say anything. But it's what happened is I did a couple songs with Darren Criss for his show. Darren, who's a very talented actor and musician and writer and producer and just a good friend and amazing talent. We did a song that Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, sang as a country artist, and it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. Did it with Chris, cool, my longtime friend and production partner. So it all came out yesterday and being promoted. But to answer all the questions, I don't know anything else about it.
But you have Mark Hamill singing a song of yours?
Mark Hamill singing a song as playing a country artist, and the song is called "Mighty as Kong" and is about King Kong's penis. So I will...
auto-tune on Mark Hamill, or is he just a savant?
What's that?
Is Mark Hamill a savant, or is there auto-tune on Mark Hamill?
Mark Hamill, we did some editing, but that dude is... after Luke Skywalker, one of the things he's probably most known for now is voicing the Joker, being a voice actor. And, man, his ability to mimic or / create a character is pretty incredible. He's got an unbelievable voice and was just, as you might expect from everything else everyone has ever said or heard, he's just like a delight and professional and stayed longer than he needed to. Many times he said, I'm not going to leave until you guys are all satisfied. Each one of you is satisfied. We talk about professionalism periodically on these streams, and there's that guy is the epitome of it.
That was just making me think of a way to transition into the professionalism, thinking about the best artist and talking last week about recording from home. Man, takes. Just get it right. I got asked yesterday about sending stems, and there's a section, my friend says there's a section where I'm not sure if the transition is going to be fixed in the mix or something. And I was like, as soon as you say the word fixed in the mix, let's go back, figure it out on your own end. So if you can't get it in the room, you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to fix this vocal later. Most likely you're not going to be able to. So I'm glad Mark Hamill was like that. But the best artist I know of, Frank Ocean with 100 takes. There's no room for error there. Like, it's got to be perfect.
The first time I ever even, I think, heard about this, probably before I was doing any recording. Do you remember I think it was called La Bamba, the movie about, I think, Richie Valens. I'm maybe getting all these names wrong, but I remember this distinct scene in the movie where he's singing the vocal. I don't know if it's actually for the song La Bamba or something else, but it is like a little montage of cuts of him going, well, and then take 2, well, and then take 3, well, and he does it like 50 times.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's how people make records. And it turns out it's exactly true. I mean, there is something magical about going in the booth and doing something emotional, and maybe you get a magical thing, but there's also times when it takes 200 takes. I think there was a great Billie Eilish Phineas thing where they're talking about the duh in Bad Guy, or one of those moments where they did it, 50 different ways to get it right. Exactly. To make it sound natural and relaxed and all of that.
Yeah, because you don't, and granted, I would say the artist knows if they need to do it or not, right? So some artists, I imagine, go in and say, you got me in 3 takes. And the engineer and the producer also knows they got you in 3 takes.
Yeah.
But other artists know this is what it takes to get where they need to be. And it might be 100 takes because they want to experiment. They want to, you do a slide on a guitar. You want to get that right scoop. I mean, it might not come the first time. It might take 100 times. But you'll know at some point in your career whether you have to do that many or the raw first 2 takes is going to give it to you and to the audience. So I think you just wind up understanding that about the people that you're working with and about yourself at some point. So there is no right and wrong for people that think you have to take 150 takes to get the duh right. That's the way they did it. That's the way it seems to be across their entire musical endeavor as a family. Is they work at it. They try. They scrap things and they do it again. And I think a lot of people do that, and some people do that too much.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, knowing when something's done is a skill in of itself. Josh asked on the chat there, how do you get a young artist to, keep the motivation and keep the excitement for doing lots of takes? And honestly, it's just a matter of experience and doing it. And one of the ways that I
take breaks.
Yeah, take breaks. One of the ways I like to talk about it is to try to tell artists and writers, this is the place to experiment, and what we have is great. Let's try a bunch of stuff. We could do it over 2 days. Sometimes you don't have 2 days with somebody, but let's try a bunch of different things. Yeah. Because right now we're not in it's the Hemingway quote that I quote all the time, which is write drunk, edit sober. And, not to use substances when necessarily recording, but the idea being, don't worry about whether something's good immediately. Just throw a lot of things out there. In the modern recording studio, we're not worrying about tape. It's just hard drive space. And everybody should have enough hard drive space to do 1 million takes of a vocal, try things a different way, try back from the mic, in front of the mic, try not thinking about it, try changing your headphone mix, just try lots of things. I definitely have recorded vocals over the course of multiple days to really try to capture an emotional space for an artist. There's the famous story of Paul McCartney recording "Oh Darling," which John Lennon later complained that Paul was stealing his style, but "Oh Darling" has that big he has that in the vocal. It's like his vocals all fucked up. So according to the story, and who knows if this is apocryphal or accurate, that they would do their normal recording sessions during the day, and then Paul would stay after, starting on Monday night, and just record that song a whole bunch. So his voice got that thrashed, blues singer in a club sound by the end of the week, and they used the Friday vocal after doing that night after night after night. So sometimes it's about just trying things and getting excited about trying things. So to answer Josh's question, I think, and you and I probably do versions of this all the time. How do you talk through something that someone's not used to? How do you convince somebody to continue to try and continue to do more things? And it's really just getting across the point that the recording studio is where you get to experiment. It's where you get to throw out bad ideas. It's where you get to try the crazy take where your voice breaks. It's where you try different, all that stuff. Yeah. That's the environment, or this is the environment to try those things.
And the best producers, engineers, A&Rs, whoever, they do that by showing it without saying it. They don't even have to say this is the place for that. They create the space for that. Aesthetically, and little doodads around the space that open up creative doors that you wouldn't think about on your own. Whether that's how they talk, tone of voice, whether that's knowing when to step back. Like we said, breaks are really important. So do a bunch of takes, go eat dinner, come back, hit a bunch of takes. Maybe after that glass of wine, you're going to get that gravel voice that you're looking for. Maybe try experimenting laying on the ground when you're trying to get something that feels a little bit more tense, just an unnatural version of that. But on a mixing tip, just kind of putting into my perspective, the try thing, I always love to talk about I think I've said this at a couple of the conversations here, but man, I when I was not busy 15 years ago, when I was starting to mix, I didn't care if a song was already released by a band or an artist I was working with. I would remix it. I would remix the same song every day from scratch, not even where I left off. If I didn't have a new client in, because I'm 17 years old and no one knows who I am, that was all the time, but I had one band recorded, say I did 3 songs with them, I would spend the next week in the studio, locked in. I'm going to remix it. I don't care if it was on iTunes. I don't do that anymore because I'm busy, but I think about it. I think about when it came out. What would I have done if I mix it on Thursday instead of that Wednesday? Because I know that Wednesday was a sunny day versus a gray day. You know, like you're going to make different decisions on different days. So to say that vocal take is the one on that, you don't really know. It might be worth coming back. Like even the production, right? You're going to come back to it on a fresh perspective. That might be a fail. The mix might be a fail another day. You always have that. We're not dealing with tape. We're not writing over tape. You have the hard drive space. Take it off. There's another experiment, which is take it off a hard drive, put it on a backup, and then do it again from scratch on another hard drive. So you can't even reach to that one where it already exists. It's a whole new perspective. So I think about those things even in the mix front. It's rare that I have to start over from scratch these days. But every once in a while you got to, and that's what I do. I delete my mix because I'm like, that wasn't it. I don't even save as on certain things. You just kind of know. How much do you feel attached to get to the mix you make in terms of creativity? How much do you feel attached do you get to the mixes you make in terms? Ali, I don't understand that question. I love you, though. I miss you.
My interpretation is do you get attached to mixes? Like you and I talked about this a little bit, the sort of emotional attachment. You're very good at detaching from.
It's not my song, so it's really.
I get way more attached to shit. But it's an interesting thing you said. Trying to translate from different disciplines or different creative or otherwise, like the idea of doing reps is just hugely important. I mean, it doesn't even have to be ego-wise. John has no ego. I have too much emotion involved in all of it.
I don't. How much do you get attached to the mix? I that's a really interesting question because I, even saying it to you guys online, there's still a part of the ego that's like, damn, you didn't like that delay throw? Like, totally get. I feel let down sometimes. But that doesn't matter, right? That's not. No audience member listening is going to be like, damn, I wish there was a delay throw on that thing. It's like when you're in the car with your friend and they're always singing that fifth above harmony that was decided to be left out in the vocal production. That's always the thing. Like leave it for people to imagine it's there. Leave it for the illusion of I'm singing along and I'm singing in that thing. Like I still get nervous sending mixes. Same. Always.
100% of the
time. Every time. I actually want that to go away. I'm 35? Am I 34? 34. I want that to go away by the time I'm 35. I said that at the same time when I was 29 and then when I was 30. Like, I always want the nervousness to go away. It never goes away. And I polled my conversations group once and I said, who here is confident every time they send a mix, right? And I'll leave out the one person that said, I am, out of 50 people up here in my house. And one person, and then by the end of that, and after talking about why I think that's ridiculous and how could you, and I kept drilling down, later on, after other questions were being asked, he raised his hand. He was like, actually, I don't really think I am. I think that we get, as mixers, this is his voice, not mine. We get paid for confidence. Like we're done. This song is done. It's ready to be mastered. And but that is our job. We're inherently practiced at knowing like this is going to translate in multiple places. Right? We talk about that almost every week at this point. I still think that's my job. Whatever the title is, sound designer, mixer, producer, whatever you are in that moment, the job is a trusted source of finality. And I take that very seriously. That doesn't mean I'm not nervous every time because you're nervous that people are going to not understand your intention behind all the changes that you made. So when you have demoitis, which I still want to talk about in depth, I don't know if this is the platform for it. I feel like we could do 3 hours on Demoitis, but I'm more nervous that I'm making a move that I inherently know that it's an improvement, but because of the way the artist and the producer have been listening to it for so long, they're going to be incapable, not by their fault, in understanding the improvement of it. Whether that's because the level is substantially lower, so they're not able to compare. Like recently I sent to an artist hey, I had to turn your rough mix down 5 dB to make it fit with the other 6 songs that we've mixed for your project already. So when A being, keep that in mind, that it's how it's going to fit in the project. This is not a standalone record. And then that will at least let them know where you're coming from, because the nervousness is always that. It's not that I do a good job. At this point, I'm getting paid I've been doing this for 15 years. I do know I'm good at this. It's like the one thing I know I'm good at is mixing records. I don't know that I do the best job every time for the song. I think I do quite a bit of the time, but there's no 100% batting average. That just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, to me, it's usually someone not agreeing with the creative choice, and that's fine. That's where the ego vanishes. I can go to bed thinking, damn, I wish that delay was in, but that's not going to impact how the audience feels throughout the song if they don't want my one creative decision. It's not. Yeah,
there's something the back and forth between it's like the micro and the macro. You got to be able to be really excited about getting the transient just right on the high end of that one ad lib, and then you also got to be able to go, do I like this or not? Is this good? Does it feel good? And the same goes for ego. You got to hit both sides of it, where you got to go, I feel really excited about getting exactly the right delay throw. And then when the artist goes, I can take that thing out, you just go, all right.
And I just say, all right. But there was on that note, that's actually really interesting. Yesterday, Spider and Michael were over. By the way, it's Spider's birthday today.
Hey, happy birthday, Spider.
Happy birthday, Spider. After this, I'm cooking a feast for his birthday.
Shout out Spider and the feast.
But last night, we were chilling, going over some website stuff for the conversations, which I want to tell you about too. We're really excited, as you kind of know, because Josh picked up the microphones today. But he was playing this random montage he made from 2 or 3 years ago that he was just recording stuff. At this time, Spider and I were recording. We were producing a bunch together. We were doing live recordings up here in the loft. And he had something down. I just got in the Fern gear, the Fern VT7 at the point. I don't know if I had the 5 in this bit, but I went in on how I spent 35 minutes dialing in the tail of a delay throw because I could hear it, right? Because the VT7 let me hear what I'm referring to as the back wall, that kind of third dimension, that super deep. Yeah, I had the 7, Spider saying. I didn't have the 5 at that point, but hearing that, what the fundamental harmonics of that VT7 do, even without the needles moving, is it brings out the fundamentals and everything, right? We talk about that with tubes, and that's why I love them so much. But it brings up the back wall, so you can hear your last 0.1 seconds of a reverb tail, or that last feedback of a delay. So I'll spend 35 minutes. I'll spend 2 hours dialing that in, maybe not consecutively, because you're going to come back to it at certain points as other things fit into place. But no one should be precious with how much and put a time limit on, I've spent 8 hours on this, so it must be great. I remember producing a song at one point, artist and co-producer remain nameless at this point, but we did a bridge. We spent 4 days on a bridge. We spent 4 days on 16 bucks.
That seems like a mistake, but keep going.
Exactly. But that's what it was. It was 4 days, kept coming back, doing a whole vocoder version of this thing that we want to not use. By the end of the day, there was no bridge in that song. By the end of the release of that song, there was 0 bridge.
Actually, I want to retract my statement. Keep going.
Okay. You don't have to. I understand. It was
but it's important, I think. Keep going.
You wouldn't know it was, because mistake isn't necessarily quite the right word, because like you said earlier, you have to try these things.
You have to go through the process. That's why I retract my. You have to spend 4 days on something that doesn't work, because sometimes it works and everything is amazing because of it. You gotta, if you feel passionate about an idea, if you feel passionate about something, pursue it as far as you possibly can.
Yeah,
as far as you possibly can.
Please mute it.
Yeah.
So getting the ego involved, I mean, okay, we have 3 people involved in this song. If one person said, I don't like this, here's why, but the other 2 agree that it should be in there, you might be able to have that thing, but you play it for people. You get feedback from people, so you get that real-time perspective, that like non-biased in the room, locked in, but you won't know that until you do it, but you also have to have the foresight to say, this might not work. So I think that way with a lot of moves. Yeah. Like, I'm doing it for this reason. We talk every week about, I mean, I can probably name every move and why I did it in every mix that I do. Not from memory every time, but if I were to look at it, I'd say, this is why I did it. Right. Most recent mix, I probably could go through it right now with you and say, this is why I did this thing. But that doesn't mean that I won't undo that move if an artist says, hey, there's not enough presence in this guitar, and I'm like, yeah, I took out 3.5 because I hate that shit in the guitar. If that's not translating to them in a feeling wise, then that's fine, but I might attempt to boost something around it differently, but I also could just undo that move and probably make them happy, and ego is completely forfeited.
There's something you were talking earlier about the starting out, if you didn't have something to do, you would remix songs. There's something kind of fundamental there, which I think all the people that I know, I can't say it's everybody that I can think of, but almost everybody I know that's a successful songwriter, producer, mixer, some sort of creative thing, and probably the same for other art forms too. There's something about the joyous obsession that you do things when you're starting out because you have time. The people that get really good really quickly are the ones that are doing things for their own sake. Just doing it because it feels interesting, doing it because you feel like you're solving a puzzle, doing it because you want to get out the same emotion and try writing another song. There's something about the consistent work ethic about, people talk about the like 10,000 hours and all that. And it's true in a sense, but only really true if what you're doing is focused and excited for a lot of it.
Yeah,
that's really how you improve.
By 10, but sure.
You think it's what?
I would multiply 10,000 hours by 10. I think you need at least 100,000 hours before.
Why did you say that? That sounds insane to me.
You're gonna master something in 10,000 hours? It's not that long. Was that 3 years?
We should actually do the math on it. I think it's more than 3 years. I mean, it depends how many hours a day you're doing it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like I don't know. I did the math at one point, and I hit 10,000 hours way before I came to LA. Yeah. And that was 10 years ago in June. And I would say now I have mastered my craft, meaning I can do it at a high level every day. Maybe 3-4 years ago. So, and before I moved here, I was doing it for 6 years. So I've been doing this for 16 years. And I would say 4 of it, I would acknowledge myself as having mastered that even sounds weird to say.
Well, that's the other thing too. If you continue to get better at something.
0.42 years, exactly. 8 hours a day, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm not even arguing for the 10,000 hours. I think that those of us that continue to get better at what we do will never feel like masters. The point of it being that if you have an opportunity to pursue something, whether it's recording a vocal more times, whether it's mixing a song 4 times, whatever is interesting to you, do that shit. Because that's what will make you better, rather than doing it by rote and memorization and repetition. Doing reps and repetition where you're focused and excited about it. Naval said this great thing about reading, and he said if you want to read, important great things, don't start by trying to read the books that you're told to read. Read whatever seems fun and become a reader, and then you'll find the deep philosophical. Read the newspaper, read comics, read blogs, read whatever you want in order to become a reader. It's the same thing with mixing and record making.
Yes. A lot of famous writers start by reading fiction, reading science fiction, right? And then they get inspired by this otherworldliness of possibility, and then they write nonfiction, right, later on and become Nobel Prize winners.
So Somebody asked a good question in the chat. How often are you too surprised by your work in terms of finding yourselves going in a completely different direction artistically than you intended? My version of that is interesting because I'm actively trying to do that. I'm actively trying to put myself in a position. And it's different for me because I'm not purely mixing all the time, but I'm actively trying to put myself in positions where I'm going to do new things. I think that's really important, maybe as a human being, but certainly as a producer and writer, the ability to get outside of my tendencies and my intuitions, I think is really, really important. I don't know how that applies to mixing because there's things in mixing that you're trying to refine and perfect, go deeper on. What do you think about that?
Good. There's another question that kind of overlaps with that. Like, do you have any good stories of mixes that kind of came together instantly, like really fast? And I talk about, like, I think my average mix time per song is probably 4 hours, but every once in a while there's a 45-minute mix. Yeah. Because they come together. That's usually to do with the production is so good and so minimal and so refined already that by the time I put it through my mix bus and my template, my very minimal template of like 8 plugins or whatever I have, it kind of just gets glued together and I can just kind of push and pull from there. I think the investment in good monitoring and a good quality mix bus and conversion, if you're going to have it out of the box, helps kind of see the end goal faster. So I'm constantly thinking about getting faster. So when you're talking about ways of challenging yourself creatively or being surprised by yourself creatively, in the mix front, I want to get all of that, all the fundamental technological things out of the way and let them be the same so I can see through the end of the song. It's kind of how I think about it. Yeah. So I'm constantly surprising myself by choosing to use only certain tools. And I try to limit myself to this because I think this is all it needs. Limit myself to not allowing myself to put certain things on certain things and letting it live. And I don't know. That's an interesting question because I'm always surprised, right? I'm always surprised with how something can actually sound done to me, because it doesn't. Most times songs don't sound done when they come in. So this, even though someone thought it was done enough to get mixed, right? There's a finality to the production most of the time. And even like as a fan of music, that's why I listen to only 60s and 70s Turkish and Iranian psych music. Like, there's nothing I can do to improve that from a mix standpoint, from a production. I can't change that. Not that I'd want to. But when I listen to modern music, there's a bunch of things I hear on almost everything. It's like, oh, that could have been done better. I felt like someone made the wrong call or someone was lazy and forgot to do it.
Why do you think that is? What is recording process, or the things you're listening to are more refined and experienced, or what's the difference?
I have a very, very unique monitoring setup. I think I have a way into music that a lot of people don't have. Very few people have a very, very dialed in.
But why don't you hear problems in the 60s and 70s Iranian psych music that you listen to?
My first answer would be the easy one, which is that's not what I make. So who am I to say?
Fair.
Right? So
that's probably the answer, actually.
That's the main answer. 2 is I can't change it because it's 5 decades old.
So your brain doesn't allow you to go. That's interesting.
Yeah. So anything coming out today, I know that I could have gotten hired to do it, right? Like, there's a chance that you, someone in our peer group could have touched it, right? So if you're 1 degree separation from that and it's not as good as you think it could be, and it's not that I think I can make it better. That's not the word that I would use. I think I would... again, I got to be careful with words. Because I think so many things are so close to being great. Yeah. And I don't know. I think I have a really unique ability of taking someone's intention and just magnifying it the slightest bit. I think it's just like what my brain does. Like, I really.
It's also, that's part of. You should feel that way. You should feel passionate about these kinds of details that, on some level, are deeply esoteric, but you feel strongly enough about them and you go, I could have made that better. Like, you got to have a little bit of that competitive.
I know. I have a lot of it. That's why I'm trying to be safe and careful on this a little bit. I do. I'm super competitive. I'm a really big sore loser. So if I find out that I didn't get a gig that I don't even know if I was supposed to, it has nothing to do with supposed to, because everyone has relationships. I'm not trying to take work from other people. Yep. I get really bummed. I used to last like fucking weeks. Now it lasts like 10 minutes. And
thank you, Waking Up app.
Yeah, thank you, Sam Harris.
Thank you, Sam Harris.
I don't really, but I'm a sore loser. And I really do think that my brain and my heart and my personality is kind of sculpted. I don't think I was born this way. I don't really believe in that. I'm kind of sculpted and learned enough to really listen for people's intention.
Yeah.
And that's what I practice. So when I think I can make something sound better, I don't even mean I would do it completely different. I mean, I would want those stems and I would take it a little further.
Yeah.
And one can argue that those little bits further mean nothing. I mean, there are songs that chart number one for record-breaking amounts of time that I know for a fact I could improve sonically, and then they'd say, well, it's already doing something. It's like, yeah, could it have done more? Could it have done another 2 weeks? Could it have broken Michael Jackson's record? Like, could it have done
could it have lasted longer? Could it have stood the test of time? Could it have?
Yes. So yeah. I would argue that that's what I'm good at.
Yeah. That's by the way, that's a lot of ego focused in a way that seems mostly very healthy, which is it motivates your desire to do great work, and your analytical brain. People often ask me, as I'm sure they do to you, people who are non-record makers, they say, I bet you're hearing this so differently than I do. And the answer is always, yes, if that's what I'm focusing on, but no, not at all. Like, do I want to, when I hear a fucking giant 808, do I want to shake my ass to it? Like, absolutely. Like,
yes.
I'm not worried about the rest of it. It just sounds dope right now, so I'm not really worried about it. But you can go into that analytical mode, and the trick, I think, with ego is to be able to put it aside when it's not useful to you. You want to have ego because you want to feel like, I'm going to do this so great. I can make this vocal amazing, or these drums really slap, they excite me, or whatever it is. But then to be able to say, okay, the ego's not useful. I'm going to listen to the artist. I'm going to do whatever it is they need, because the joy and the job is in making something for them because it's their record.
Yeah, you can say all of that by letting yourself have the first pass, right? Whether it be a mix or a production. Someone's asking you to do a thing, do your thing.
Yeah.
Do it. Be prepared for them not to like your thing, even though they think they want your thing. But in the first pass, break that shit apart, rebuild it your own way, do it. Like on a production tip, say a song is going around, Selena Gomez, some like really big artist, and they're hiring 6 different producers or producer teams to take a stab at a song. They're paying you. This isn't on spec. This is like a legitimate way to find the right version of this thing.
I think this never happens, by the way, but keep going.
But yeah, I know. I'm living.
I know. Keep going
here. But say, and it has that first, exactly what Rory just said. That first pass is mine. Do it. Do your thing. Because that's your best foot forward. If you try to do what Max Martin would do, they're already paying Max Martin to do his version.
Yeah.
What, you're going to do a Max Martin?
No.
No, you're not. Not that you're not going to do a comparable version of it because you're well studied in him. That's fine, but he's going to do it better all the time because it's him, and it's going to be transparent that way. But always take that first pass. And I that's like a bit of a mantra for myself, because again, back to that question of are you confident sending every mix? No, and I'm not confident of doing my thing every time either. And I don't think I ever will be, but that's what I tell myself every day. They're coming to you because they heard that song that you did, right? That's their email. Hey, we love your work on so-and-so. We love your, whatever. That's not really what they want most of the time, but I'm going to try to give it to them every time, and for myself. Because I do want to feel like I'm, there's a bit of me in the song. But if we're breaking it down percentage-wise, I want to have the least bit of my voice in the song, because I'm one of the last people in the line that have put so much into it, and I want to bring out their voices.
So. Where in a career arc does that become more or less important? Because certainly when you are starting out and you're learning how to mix, you're learning how to produce, it's the Neil Gaiman thing. You're not going to find your voice until you sound like a lot of other people. The instinct to copy is huge, and it's everybody. Nobody starts out mixing just in a vacuum. You're listening to mixes. You're trying. Before I met Eric Valentine, I was trying to make my drums sound like his Good Charlotte drums.
Yeah, right.
So at what point do you? And I don't know if there's a general answer, but I now remember a moment that it happened with me. But when did that start to transition from I'm being hired to do something that I need to figure out how to do versus I now do this thing well, whether you feel you have mastery or not? When did you start saying they're paying me for me to do my thing, so I'm going to start there?
Last year.
Last year.
I mean, dude, this whole live on Instagram thing is about being as honest and transparent.
Yeah, of course.
I only want to exist that way. I would say when Khalid started doing so well and, hit number 3, I was like, that's what I want music to sound like in R&B. So specifically, right, I get paid a lot. I get hired a lot to do pop R&B.
Yeah.
So in that...
Is it because of the Khalid stuff?
That's what I was doing most of the time anyway. But then when you get a hit with it, I think people start coming to you. That's what I'm saying. I can tangibly say that my year after that song that I did with Dennis Koziak, that's definitely a collaborative mix because he does everything with Khalid and that's kind of the thing. But I definitely was able to steer it in a sonic direction that I had it envisioned in my head. And right, it was a bit of a struggle with Disclosure producing it because they're an EDM group, right? And they tightly compress everything. And my feelings on compression, I didn't use anything. So
did you go back and forth with them?
One pass. Guy was like, love this. It's definitely less compressed than mine. And then we texted. It was like, hey, do you want me to send back a pass with slightly more? And I don't think I even compressed. I think I had more transient punchiness added. Whatever Dennis and I thought of as a good move. They loved. The second pass was the mastered pass for that. And he was like, honestly, I like both of these. You guys pick. And I actually liked the second pass because I thought that whatever his feedback gave me to bring out a little bit more energy in some things. But theirs was super straight and it had very little swing to it. It wasn't R&B enough for me. It didn't have that lean back kind of groove.
Ooh, can I take a little sidebar for a second? There's a really interesting thing that and I don't want to lose your train because I want to hear more about it. This idea of getting notes and doing exactly what the note asks for versus doing notes and interpreting them to achieve the result. And that just comes from lots of experience, but the ability to translate notes from artist, A&R, manager, producer, those sort of people is a huge skill. Mm-hmm. And that seems like the perfect moment of that, where you're dealing with a Disclosure, an unbelievably talented duo that was producing a slower tempo R&B song. Mm-hmm. That when you heard it, you were like, okay, their instincts on I hope you're grooving to the song right now.
I am.
Their instincts on compression fit a slightly different genre and a different sound. Yep. So when you sent them a mix that didn't have the same sort of compression and they said, can we try more compression? You thought what? You thought about transients. You thought about ways to achieve what you felt they were missing. Yep. Without just doing your version of the thing that they were doing.
Yeah, I don't think I had one compressor on that song.
That's crazy.
I don't think we did at all. Again, unless you call The Unfair Child a compressor, which I don't. Yeah. That's on the vocal, but everything's clip gained.
You obviously got lots of things with compression on them.
Yeah. Most of their stuff is mix bus reliant, so the stems didn't feel compressed. It sounded like their mix bus I didn't have, or I think we did. We had I think we remade it with an SSL compressor. I just took it all off, but I think we had theirs. I think we had it exactly the same. Best low end in R&B right there. That was the goal.
I think best low end, best transients.
That kick is so long and deep, and it's so dialed, and you can't do that with a compressor holding it up the whole time. You just got to let it breathe. But I'm grooving to it because in my head I'm hearing the blah 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 blah. Their version was blah 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 bop, bop. It felt faster. It felt like
right, because you're losing the tails on things.
Yes. So like I'm in there clip gaining down the bop, 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 to kind of like get that feel to kind of sway a little bit. Without compression too, you can really dial in that bounce. And the hi-hats, if you listen subtly, there's a hi-hat in there that's doing the same swing. So that's all clip gain to kind of just groove at the same time. And if you put a compressor on it, that's an overall general processing. It's just everything gets put together, and that's not what we want out of these things. We want the hi-hat to feel a little bit more behind the synth transient, so you get all that articulation, right? So back to the original question, I think that because I could talk about that.
By the way, I want you to nerd out a little because I love that mix. That's one of my favorite things.
That's why I'm bringing it up. You don't want to I don't want to do this in 10 years where I'm still talking about talk, right? Like, but it's
do it now, bro.
Yeah, it's still a relevant mix that stays on people's minds in R&B. So it is nice to talk about. But that was the moment where I said to myself, okay, that song won. Right? It was nominated for Record of the Year. It hit all the markers that say that's a successful song. So ego aside, just objectively, that song, oh, I love Bad Luck from that. That mix is my second favorite. Similar approach, by the way, on that one.
Josh got good ears.
Yeah, it's very similar kind of. I even think I swapped the kick to Bad Luck from because it just felt right. But I didn't want to get off the train of thought.
You were talking about
that song won, so I can say that's what I wanted it to sound like. Other people are recognizing it and relating to it and feeling something from it. I now know that in that genre, I can do that again. And the chances, the probability of it working is what an A&R or a manager or an artist or someone is paying me for. That the probability of success is higher, right? That's why you hire a producer that has a good track record and a mixer. It's really to have the probability being high of success, right? Yeah. So along the line, if a song doesn't work, they can't put blame on the A&Rs. Like I hired the right pieces, like I got this done. Yeah. There's that part of it. You're not taking into consideration like when did you drop the record? Like did Kanye put a record out the same day? Is there a pandemic and a lockdown happening the same day? There's so much that can happen on a day of release that can get in the way of that success. But we hit it right, and I know a lot of it has to do with how it sounds. I think it's a very, very nostalgic feeling, but fresh perspective coming out at a time where a lot of music was really loud and overexcited. I remember Khalid coming up to listen to it, coming to the studio up here and listening down to the whole album and him being like, man, this shit sounds listenable. And I was like, what a great fucking note to get. Listenable. He said, man, you got to be in the mood to listen to some shit. You can put this on and cruise to it in a car any time of the day. And I'm like, that was it. But that was exactly what, like I don't think we met maybe once before, maybe twice before, but that was the first time I was like, we get each other, and I already knew because Dennis and his relationship is so tight because he records everything. Like I already knew they had it, and Dennis had my trust, and I have Dennis's trust. We had that, but that was a specific moment. I was like, this is going to work. So I know I can get hired to do that, and I feel confident in that lane all the time.
Yeah.
Or at least to put my first pass forward in that. It's kind of back to that question.
You said one thing which I wanted to pick out just on a very nerdy level.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said a lot. Sorry.
I love this is what this is for, man. People enjoy these things. We're getting very good feedback on these, and I think it's these sort of conversations where you just get excited about these weird little nuances.
Excited! I got caffeine in me again. Sorry,
I know. There you go. There you go. The flam with the hi hat, where the things are sort of behind on that record, and and I'm just going to repeat something you said and tell me if I'm misinterpreted. But if you were to use bus compression, things like that, you lose the particular like double hit of that flam. Mm-hmm. And that flam, there's so many things about that song that are great, but that flam makes that fucking song. Yeah. It makes the whole thing like gushy and lean. And so when you got the rough mix, was that balance between those things different?
I can't even determine the hi-hat to synth in that because there's so much top. And again, that's a if we're getting even geekier, talking about filter, right? The synth, even the bright synth, is filtered down pretty low, 12, 15K, right? Like low, so the hi-hat can have its air above there, or you can go the opposite way and filter. You're sculpting, and again, monitoring. This is PMC at its finest. Like the amount of power that gets to the tweeter on PMC speakers, but people say, we talked about this last week, say they're bright. It's like pop music is bright, right? It's actually really authentic top end because of how much power and consistency is coming into those drivers that let you hear. I was saying last week, I can tell the difference between 11K and 12K, right? So because I know that, I'm not going to be lazy and not utilize that audibility factor. I'm filtering down so the hi-hat doesn't occupy the same space as a bright synth. When that chorus comes in, there's another version, it's so subtle, another version of the main synth that has no transient and only has reverb, right? So I'm saturating the mid-range into that so you get this subtle extra length to a very similar synth sound, right? There's very deliberate moves. When you talk about the flamming of things, it's like that was inherent in Disclosure's production. All the layers were so intentional, and they were getting a bit combined, obscured, right, by compression, by bus compression. Again, if OG Volta was on here right now, like compression works, but I think in individual ways, right? I don't believe in too much bus compression. I would,
or like we talked about, to achieve an effect.
Yes, to achieve an effect. Like I wouldn't put all guitars, including palm mutes, full diamond chords, and a lead guitar to a guitar bus and compress it. Like I would love for someone to. Oh, he is here. Hey guys, I would love to hear an argument of why you would want to compress the palm muting with sustained chords and a lead guitar solo in the bridge through the same bus. Like just someone tell me why you would do this. And if there is a reason for it, maybe it's 1 in 1,000. It's like that just felt good, or it's like maybe you thought it felt good, or there's a reason why you have you see people's console tapes back in the day. It's like rhythm guitar, lead guitar. They're not going to a guitar bus. That's the bus. That's the aux. It's the rhythm guitars. Let's glue them together. I would still argue you can do that with saturation and not necessarily having to use a compressor. But
maybe residual from the previous 15 years of loudness wars. That to get something as loud as you can for a zero CD master, the more bus compression and the more you can get away with it to just go crazy. Like it was necessary on some level to compete with the other thrashy rock band that you were seeing.
And now it's not.
Now it's not at all.
But the flamming thing, I like thinking about it as flamming, but I also like thinking of it as separation, right? Because it's not really flamming. You're not doing a kind of drum flam. You're not. It's so subtle. It's like maybe 100 samples off from each other, or 10 milliseconds off, because that's the nudge. I even think in that song, which I shouldn't talk about too much out loud, but I'm pretty sure I nudged the hi-hats back, right? Mm-hmm. I think I heard that's what it should be doing, and let the synth dictate the feel, and the hi-hats are behind, so the swing is there. Like I think I did that. I'm hesitant to really confirm that without looking at my playlist. I would always duplicate the playlist in the session, because you never want to just move something without being able to go back.
Of course.
How'd you do that? I only move those things.
Duplicate your playlist when you're doing edits, kids.
Always duplicate before you do anything.
Yeah. Actually, not a
save
bad
as
idea.
Before you do too much of it.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident that if I'm nudging something, I rarely do it. So when I do it, it's like, ooh, this is because Tony has whacked my hand with a wrist so many times for nudging shit. So
fortunately, he's not there to whack your wrist anymore. That's an interesting thing, though. That is something I've done a fair amount. I don't do a lot of pure mixing. I'm mostly producing and writing. Mm-hmm. But I've definitely done, and nudging happens for flam reasons, for phase reasons. There's lots of reasons to do that, and it sounds like to achieve the intent of what the guys in Disclosure did, to get that lean just the right way. They had some effects on it that you were going to take a different approach, so it was necessary for you to make some little adjustments
Yes.
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense.
I think it does. You just have to be really, really careful and respectful when doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever nudge or flip phase with utmost confidence that you're making it better every time. I think second guess, double check. It's kind of like a do not try this at home type move a lot of the times, because sometimes if someone has 4 snares and you get them all into phase, it takes a completely different snare character, right? Like if they were to send you a group stem of the snare, that's not their snare anymore. And you can maybe objectively say it sounds better now because it feels like all that body's in it. That might not be what they're going for. So
yeah, they're the creative architects.
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm doing moves like that, I'm constantly A-Bing with the rough and saying, okay, well, now that I've got it in phase, what mid-range and upper mid-range character is lost from it because now there's so much body. I get that back. Sometimes if I'm doing things fast and I'm a bit lazy, which is rare, but you got to admit sometimes that happens, they have to be like, hey, snare's got a lot of low end. Can you like dip any boost you're doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing any boost. Oh, right, I flipped the phase. And they're hearing the difference. And it's not that was a bad move. It's that I didn't make up for the character loss from the smack of something like from a breakbeat that I flipped against the sample. You know,
yeah, that's totally.
Gotta be really careful. It's not something you just do because visually. It's like, again, like you wouldn't necessarily if you're in the key of A and you see an EQ and there's a 440 hertz boost. Like that's the fundamental. Just because it looks high on the Pro Q3. Graphic, analyzer doesn't mean you need to take that out because it's up. It's like that's the fundamental. Like how much of that you want. Just because you visually see something's wrong doesn't mean it's wrong.
So don't use your eyes, use your ears as well.
Yeah, I think use both. I think I think analyzers are super helpful.
Yeah.
All the time, I could mix while I'm on a phone call to some degree with certain things. Again, don't try this at home.
Yeah. Yeah, once now that you're in your mastery era, we got about 8 minutes left. We got a couple of really good, potentially super deep questions about harmonics and transients.
See where we land. We can always pick up.
Yeah, which we also already talked a bit about from the Khalid record. Mm-hmm. Maybe we save harmonics for another time because that's a really deep topic that I think covers mixing, covers producing, covers recording engineering, covers analog synthesis. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff with harmonics, and there's a great. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that next week.
Matt and Jon discuss harmonics.
Yeah, I mean that's what I basically would like to do with harmonics is say a bunch of things that I think I know, and then have you correct me, and then have people correct us.
Cool.
Because there's a lot of really interesting things, and even from just learning, we'll give homework to people. Go learn what the harmonic series is. Just go harmonics in music. There's probably a Wikipedia page. Go learn about the harmonic series, and then we'll talk about it next week as it applies to analog synthesis, as it applies to second and third order harmonic distortion in mixes, what that means, what that sounds like. We have different overlapping views on it, but you probably have Matt and Jon in harmony. That's what we'll call.
It says job actually.
Matt and Jon. The other one was about transient shaping, which I think is also another. That's also a deep topic that I don't know a huge amount about. You talk about it a bit, so maybe we could talk for a few minutes about that, and then we could continue that.
What else we got? Anything else there that looks appetizing?
There were a few others.
I'm down to talk about transient shaping, but I can talk about that in 1 minute.
Talk about it in 1 minute. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, so talk about transient shaping because this was a specific question about transient shaping on vocals. But when do you use transient shaping? Why do you use it? I know I have tried spiff. I like spiff, Josh. Yes. The things that people are trying to achieve oftentimes with compression is to have transients poke out in a certain way with a slow attack, and you get. But so you one don't believe that that's the best way to do it, and two. Yeah, I mean, slow attack. You're still compressing the attack, so you're reducing your transient. No matter what, we talked about this a few weeks ago. As soon as you engage a compressor, your favorite compressor, whatever it is, as soon as you engage it, and the threshold, the ratio goes above 1.1 to 0, right? As soon as you're at that, you're compressing and a third of your transient is gone. even with the slowest attack,
Yes.
I thought conceptually it was a certain amount of time before the compressor's engaged.
Nope. Also, Richard, yes, transients are life. Transients are how things translate. So if I were to kind of try to coin that, that's how you get things to translate when records are being turned down a substantial amount. I don't want to talk about grooming of facial hair, though Matt's mustache is very much on point. There is no true bypass on a compressor once engaged. So it is to read, again, there's probably some super geek that knows how to describe this even more than I do, but as soon as you put the ratio in, it has to find a transient. It has to look for what it's supposed to do mechanistically. So it's trying to find it, and it's reducing it as soon as you put a ratio in. There's probably some more science behind this. I forgot where I've read this, but I've read it many, many times. I think the guy who created the 1176 discusses this, right? Because on the old 1176s, if you put the attack all the way slow, the compressor's off, right? That's the bypass. Once you engage it at all, you're compressing, right? Because there's no ratio on the on 1176. That's the engage. That's off or on. It's this is really tricky.
We could. That's why I said we could maybe save this. You said 1 minute. You were cocky about it.
Well, we were talking about transient shaping, and I think that's when I think about transient shaping, I'm not talking about compressors. I'm talking about using a transient shaper. There's a new tool on the market. Hey, there's a new tool on the market we got here. It's by Neutron, by Isotope, called Transient Shaper, right? I'm selling the Transient Shaper. Use that instead. Attack is on a delay.
Okay, that answers my question. Yeah, exactly. So my misconception about it was it takes a second for the compressor to engage, but it turns out that it's just takes it a second to fully engage.
Yes, there's no delay. There's no pre-delay. There's no delay mechanism. It's instant. It's on the piece of, on the instrument. Engage immediately at the cost of the threshold. Yes, and if you have, okay, transient shapers.
Let's do 2 minutes on transient shapers and why you like them. What do you use them for? Whatever you want to say.
I use them a lot because I saturate a lot, and inherently by saturating, you're smoothing out transients. So I use them as a precautionary remakeup of transients, very specifically.
So you're smoothing them out, but enhancing them, but not enhancing. Yes.
Yes. Well, you're smoothing out. Saturation, depending on what tool you're using, will most likely smooth and reduce transients because you're kind of bringing it all together and bringing that fundamental up. I would argue that Fern gear that I use, yes, post-saturation mostly, sometimes both. OG with them sexy knees. Yeah, fuck with the difference of the knee on that stuff, the different curves that Neutron has. I usually use the quickest and the most precise. It seems to do the least because I just want them to poke out right as they were. I'm not necessarily trying to add much transient to things in the mix process. This is going to be different in production. I'm trying to remake, like I keep saying, after saturation. So I'm bringing the fundamentals and I'm gluing things together and emboldening them with saturation. By default, that's getting rid of some transients, unless you're talking about VT7, VT5, and really good Fern, even auto harmonic things. They actually seem to make transients pop more. I think it's subjective. I think it's actually still rounding them off, but it's bringing them more focused so they feel like they're there. I like to take that one step further and basically reprogram the transient after I'm reducing.
You're making them thicker and more precise.
Yes, thicker and then more precise using different tools. So Spiff that Josh brought up, Spiff is tight for multiband. I get weird with multiband anything because of phasing issues, so I'm skeptical on most multiband. I'm probably the only mixer that I know of that is very hesitant to use multiband anything. I barely use multiband on anything. I'll say again.
We've got very these multiband on anything.
I barely use multiband.
We got 30 seconds left.
Oh, that's annoying. Let's just call it then. Can I say something in 30 seconds? We're about to put a link in the conversation's bio we're going to record the first podcast, and I'm going to have Audio Movers stream it live for people on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time.